So next I want to talk about hands-on-shoulder sociograms. So this was one of the original sociometry tools that was created by Jacob Moreno long before he even created psychodrama. And sociograms were originally done pen to paper, but they also can be done experientially by asking individuals to put a hand on the shoulder of somebody in the group that answers the prompt for them. So this is an exercise that involves some physical touch. So it would be important, in order to keep it trauma-informed, that we first check in with the group about their comfort level and level of safety with physical touch. This is also important, especially for certain cultural and religious communities, that you're really attentive to this piece related to physical touch. Of course, many trauma survivors have experienced inappropriate or unhealthy physical touch that was related to their trauma, which only makes it that much more important that we're careful with this exercise and that we check in with the group about physical touch before initiating this exercise. So there's different ways you could do that. You could do it with a spectrogram, 0 to 10. How comfortable are you with physical touch in the form of a hand on the shoulder? Or 0 to 10, how comfortable do you feel setting boundaries about physical touch? You could do it through a group discussion or make it part of the group norms and rules. Different ways that you could address this in the group. But it's important that you do address it. So basically, hands on shoulders is going to help you look at the distribution of connection and choices within the group. And it's going to help participants connect with each other in deep and meaningful ways. The way it works is we ask a prompt, and you ask everyone in the group to go put their hand on the shoulder of one person in the group. So, for example, if we were doing a group that was focused on relationships, for example, I could say, go and put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group here who's sharing and whose presence in the group has helped you improve your relationships. Everybody would go put a hand on someone else's shoulder and would be able to see the distribution of connection and choices within the group based on this criteria. This gives you an opportunity to facilitate some sharing with each question. You could have each person in the group share aloud why they chose the person that they chose and how their participation has helped them. Or you could have them share one-on-one with the person they chose about precisely why they chose them. So different ways to facilitate sharing with this. Then we could continue with additional questions. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group that you would choose to play the role of your willingness to work on your relationships. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group whose love for their partner has inspired you and helped you in your own romantic relationships. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group who you would call if you needed relationship support or advice in the future. So a bunch of different questions that you could ask related to any topic, related to any content. This is an exercise where I find that group members find it harder to choose and to be chosen for negative prompts or criteria. So you'd want to be really thoughtful if you're going to use any more difficult or trauma-based prompts with this exercise. You also need to consider if you're going to use entirely sociometric, like real-time prompts, or if you're going to use more psychodramatic prompts related to pick someone who you would choose to play the role of your courage, of your vulnerability, of your mother, of your younger self, of yourself in the future. Those would be more psychodramatic prompts, whereas sociometric prompts would be more focused on the here and now experience. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group who has helped you feel comfortable. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group who has helped you understand your depression better. Put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group you'd like to get to know better. These are more sociometric prompts. So I often like to use a combination of both in my hands-on shoulder sociograms. These exercises can quickly evolve into some pretty cathartic and vulnerable moments, so you want to be sure that the group is in their window of tolerance. And you need to really be careful about keeping an eye on those who are being highly chosen, and especially those who are being unchosen in this exercise. So this is where the sociodynamic effect really will show up. And if you don't intervene and you aren't particularly thoughtful in the prompts you're offering, you're going to end up with individuals in the group that are unchosen after multiple prompts and who are feeling rejected, isolated, or even feeling triggered based on past experiences of rejection or isolation. So this is a real risk of this exercise. And I find this hands-on shoulder sociograms to be the most risky sociometry process. So if you're new to this, I would suggest getting familiar with all the other sociometry processes before you start to use this one. Sometimes you really have to think on your feet and be spontaneous. If you notice that somebody's being unchosen again and again, you might have to have the thoughtfulness and spontaneity, creativity to, as a facilitator, generate a new prompt based on what you know about someone who's being unchosen that makes them more likely to be highly chosen. So, for example, if I have a group member, once I had a group member who was being unchosen again and again and again and again in the exercise. And this was a group member who was like a big, strong, tough guy, and he had all these tattoos throughout his whole body and tattoos on his face, and he didn't share much about himself, and he was pretty guarded and defended. People in the group were intimidated by him. They were a bit afraid of him, and he was unchosen after multiple hands-on-shoulder sociogram prompts, and I noticed it. So I created a prompt that would make him highly chosen. And what I did was I said, put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group who you would want on your team if you were going to get into a fight with somebody. And naturally, every single person in this group put their hand on this guy's shoulder. And one at a time, they got to tell him how they experienced him and why they chose him. I chose you because I feel like I'd rather you be on my team than against me in a fist fight. I chose you because you look like you're pretty tough and pretty strong. I chose you because looks like you've been in a couple fights in your life and you know how to handle yourself. And after half of the group had shared with him why they picked him, he started to soften a bit, and he turned to the group and said, this isn't all of me, essentially. He said, because of my addiction, because of my trauma, my life experiences, I've had to put up walls and learn how to protect myself and not let others in. But I'm really a good guy underneath this tough surface. And he started to be vulnerable with the group and share with them other parts of himself beyond this guardedness and this wall and this tough exterior. And throughout the rest of the group exercise, he was much more highly chosen by the group than before this prompt. So you might have to think on your feet and create new prompts that you didn't originally plan to use based on who's being unchosen. And you'd want to create time after this exercise to process any feelings that came up for people about having to make choices, about what they were and weren't chosen for, and for folks that were highly chosen or unchosen. So again, this is the exercise from sociometry, I believe, has the most risk for causing harm or triggering folks or potentially re-traumatizing folks. As group facilitators and sociometrists, we have a real responsibility to avoid reenacting dynamics related to inclusion and exclusion within our groups. So we really need to be aware of this sociodynamic effect. So this exercise can also quickly evolve into different psychodrama vignettes. I could ask the group to put your hand on the shoulder of someone in the group who you would choose to play the role of you as a child. And obviously I wouldn't start with a prompt that loaded. That would be like halfway through the exercise. And then once they've made their choice, instead of telling their person why they picked them, I might say, I want you to imagine the person that you chose is you as a child for a moment. And I want you to offer a sentence to you as a child, something that you needed to hear back then and didn't get the chance to hear, something affirming or validating that would be helpful and offer some guidance about the years to come. And each person could take a moment to offer a statement to the person they chose as if that person was themselves as a child. And so we're quickly and seamlessly moving into short psychodramatic vignettes or statements. So again, this is an exercise that can be pretty intense, and you just want to be careful about how you're using it in terms of trauma-informed practice. And there's more content in my book in chapter 4 about thinking this through before using this exercise and how to keep the process as safe as possible.